Incredible joke. My gosh, we should always hear those before we open. Speaking to some people off air. Hey, Tom McKay here, your incredible host with 3D Politics Live. I got all three Davids, the Davids that matter: David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso, of course, associated with SoonerPolitics.org, ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and at Dave D'Ambroso on Facebook. You can yell at me, speak to me, or compliment me on 3D Politics Live right here. Ladies and gentlemen, I tried to get over it, but still, it's football season. I'm still upset with the referees, and I have some constructive criticism. It's only week 2, basically. We've had 31 games. We've had 595 flags. Once again, Ed Hockules is a gateway referee. We don't really want to hear your name. We don't care who you are. You'll just notice that that's about 20 flags per game, actually 26 flags in the Detroit game. That's about 3 flags. That's a flag every 3 minutes. That's 20 flags. We're up from an average of about 13 to 12 flags per game in 2013. The problem is it's not just a flag anymore. We're calling in penalties that are out of sync with the philosophical nature of the game. If you look up Walter Campbell's History of Football, you'll find out that the basic differences between football and rugby and that other girls' game where they kick the ball around.
Football is what they call it.
Yeah, that would be real football.
With 6.5 billion people.
The consensus never made it in science.
Tom, I got to say, this was just week 6 of the preseason. That's all it was. That's where eventually they'll learn to play.
No, I'm talking about the first 2 opening.
I know, and I'm calling week 5 and 6 of the preseason.
All right, call a tail of a dog a leg. So, but the point is, we're no longer calling penalties on things that are philosophically accurate with the game. The whole reason football is different than rugby and soccer is unnecessary roughness. There should literally be no unnecessary roughness calls. Furthermore, an offensive pass interference is philosophically impossible. If I am in on the play and it is my pass, I literally cannot interfere with my own offensive pass. Offensive pass interference should be a penalty that goes away. Spiking the ball to timeout within the last 2 minutes is literally intentional grounding. It's totally philosophically against the grain. Referee has the freedom to throw as many flags as he wants with no penalty. They should be couched just like the coaches are. The referee should have no more than 3 flags per half.
There you go.
And they should be penalized if they're wrong. And no more if they throw the flag. Oh, there's no infraction on the field. Try that, coaches. Oh, yeah, I didn't really mean to throw that flag.
I love it.
Why in the hell do they have to huddle? They are referees. You're not playing the game. Throw the flag and make the call. It's like, throw the flag and get your buddies together. Am I right? I don't know. Am I right? Well, do you want them to have the score? No,
Tom,
really.
Tom, I'll tune in just to watch the second quarter and the fourth quarter, because once 3 flags are gone, it's freaking anarchy.
It's not anarchy. It's called football. You want to watch something else, it's called something else. The fact is, the referees are too much a part of the game.
Yes.
We'd like to just watch 10 minutes of football without having the referees. People have said to me, Tom, it's all about the money. They just want to add the commercial interest, which they have added about 5 minutes per game, which is 31 games a week times 5. They added literally an entire 3 hours of commercial breaks over there, period. But I say it's not about the money. It's the control. They're ruining the tradition. They're controlling the flow. They're controlling who wins the game, literally. You saw what happened this last week? So anyway, I'm over it.
Government run amok.
It's government run. And there's another problem. Why should we allow the referees to be questioned? Are they not the final authority?
Yeah.
Can we not let the referees just make the call?
I only have one question, Tom. Did you call someone ad hocules earlier?
Ad hocules.
Okay.
It wasn't ad
I thought it was some kind of play on it.
ad hoc.
Okay.
Tom, back when you and I were teenagers, they come up with this new rule. Yes, okay. Tom's still a teenager. Don't tell him any different. But they came up with this new rule called excessive celebration. These are men. These are men with testosterone. These are men who you want them to enjoy the game. You want them to give their best and be excited when they have success.
I thought that was the gay pride
It's
celebration of
it's,
success.
it's post-gender, right? I mean, they're both simultaneously the sports ball players and the cheerleaders. I mean, shouldn't that be celebrated?
Hey, I got to ask, Oldham, there's a female soccer player that might get picked up by a team as a place kicker. Have you heard about this?
No, I hadn't.
Yeah, one of the gals that was on our
Hey, if she can make
the
the
World
she
Cup
can kick it.
team, and she can kick. She kicked a field goal almost 70 yards.
Sure.
Now, it was in practice, wasn't in the tenseness and pressure of the game. But this looks interesting. What do you think? You want to have?
Well,
our
the
first
question is, can she tackle?
I'm
Because
completely
how many
indifferent.
times have you seen I mean, not that you have place kickers getting their kicks blocked, but they have to sometimes make a tackle.
Have you
especially
seen the other 31 place kickers? Not one of them can tackle.
Hey, at times they do, but that's the real question.
If they do, it's a shocking moment.
The
You
real
know?
question is, can you tackle her, and how do you do it? Two
There you
below,
go.
Two below.
All I know about
What
kickers
is
is I once had a friend who got a full ride to TU because he was exceptional at kicking a football, and that's it. He was terrible at everything else,
Sure.
everything
Sure.
else in life, but he was a phenomenal kicker. And I think what I heard was they may use him like up to one time, between 0 and like a couple of times per season, and that was free education.
It's like a wizard. You know, wizards, you got to have one on your team. You don't use them all the time. 99% of the time, the wizard is useless. But the 1% of the time, you need a wizard. Pow, it's worth his money.
I'm so out of my depth with
Yeah.
sports ball. I don't know
Wizard,
what a
he's trying to help
wizard is.
A
Well,
You know,
wizard.
just trying to help you through this football problem.
Okay. Makes as much sense as
I'm stuck on ad hocules. You know, I love that. I'm gonna find a way to incorporate that.
I want to see a referee named A Priori. So,
Yeah.
so what do you want to talk about, boys? Impeachment or otherwise?
Well, let's start with the big one. Let's start with the national.
Okay, well, the football thing was my big national
That's the
story.
big.
Oh, it's big, Tom. It's big.
Nothing.
And if you're an
Nothing
NFL
after
official,
that.
you can contact Tom McKay on this
That's right.
program.
Hey, and you know what? Instead of taking away yardage, because nobody cares about yardage, take away points. If you're going to throw a flag, take points. And all of a sudden the coaches will be like, hey, boys.
I still say the real men are the rugby players. They do it all without any pads or helmets.
All right.
All right. Impeachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Hey.
one?
It's gonna happen for sure this time, guys.
Which
This
impeachment?
time, Trump is finished.
Well, not only Trump, but his picks. Kavanaugh. Now they're rehashing. It's Kavanaugh 2.0.
There's another
Part
unsubstantiated
two.
claim. Whoa.
Yeah.
I tell you, an hour ago,
Well-
Donald Trump tweeted. He nailed it. Look it up, folks. He went after the Gray Lady or New York Times because they just got uncovered in the last 2 hours as having selectively edited out a statement to leave a lot of mitigating
Oh, yeah.
information.
They wouldn't
Well,
do that.
and I haven't
That
had
was
time to pull up the information, but folks, do your research. This is why it's so important to choose your news sources carefully. The New York Times has written a piece based on a book and are rehashing the Kavanaugh debate. Now, mind you, I am the first guy who will say Kavanaugh needs to be impeached because he has already violated his oath,
Is he the
along with eight
architect
other
of the
justices.
Patriot Act? Was
Well,
he one of the architects?
He
of the
says
Patriot Act?
he swore under oath that was a no.
But like,
but-
isn't his name on
but-
those documents though?
Because supposedly because he was just
What?
clerk.
What makes
clerk
him,
for the
what
White
makes him
House.
bad again?
Well, because he has already voted. Basically, he's put collegiality before
What does that
precedent,
even
or before
mean?
collegiality means getting along with his fellow judges
Oh.
before a precept, and he has put precedent before principles. And so what he argued before the Senate was that he was going to overlook any unlawful activity by the Supreme Court in years past and uphold precedent, and he would overlook any kinds of problems that they had, legal problems that the court would create for collegiality or getting along with his fellow
So
judges.
you're saying he doesn't have autism? This is your problem with him?
This sounds like the cooperative advancement they teach in the Tulsa public schools. If you get along, we don't care if you get the grade academic advancement. We care if you get along with the collegiate.
Yes, well, it's like
Move
the
you forward.
well, it's
regardless.
like the famous photo of the note sent home by the teacher from school saying that I taught this wrong thing and your child corrected me before the class and he has therefore got a demerit and needs to be spoken to about proper
Respect for
respect
authority.
for authority.
Yeah, propriety.
When the kid was absolutely right, and that's exactly what's going on. That's where Kavanaugh is. He's already judged a couple times wrongly and deprived people of their rights and proper
What judge
judgment.
doesn't rule wrongly on
Well,
occasion?
here's the thing. When it happens in high school, it's called peer pressure. When it happens in the business world, in the corporate conference room, it's called groupthink. And it's still the same problem.
Right.
And people need to be independent minded when it comes to knowing truth.
Well, and for that, I applaud Judge Gorsuch, who has demonstrated that.
Yeah.
All that said, these charges are more of the same kinds of blasphemy that means absolutely nothing. It's dragging up 30-year-old supposed things that in other articles that the New York Times themselves have printed, they have no corroboration for. And so it's more of the same. They have no corroboration again, and it's pure libel. And the question is, will Kavanaugh or his family or anybody like that go after it?
You have Democrats, and essentially they're saying, I don't know who Trump's next Supreme Court justice pick is. All I know is they sexually assaulted me at some point in time with some group of people. I don't have any specifics as to anything about the event other than for sure it's whoever Trump nominates. And I'm having a hard time recalling who they are right now, but it's whoever they are, even if it's a woman.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, meanwhile, we mentioned impeachments because Gerald Nadler, the House Oversight Committee, is still going after Trump. They essentially are doing preparation for impeachment on him.
And what he did to those gymnasts is just terrible.
Well, I mean,
Terrible.
why are they just wasting their own time? I mean, I think this is kind of like, just a cynical political play on the part of Democrats. It's a fundraising tactic.
Yeah, bingo.
They're not gonna get it through the Senate ever. They might not even get it through the House.
Absolutely.
Half or a majority of Dems aren't even going to vote for it
Yeah.
unless they get whipped up. But their hearts wouldn't be in it. I mean, Nancy Pelosi has no appetite for it because she knows what a loser it is.
Yeah, Trump is raising money way more than the Democrats right now for the next election cycle. And they got to whip up something to believe in to get people to give their money to leftist candidates. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Good fundraiser.
Yep.
Oh, and Beto taking your guns. Great.
Yeah, we've got to talk about that.
Let's move into the Democratic debates because we can clarify one thing for sure. They are coming after the guns. That is no longer a debatable topic. I mean, they are coming for the guns.
I love that. For years and years and years, you had these so-called big brain centrists and these Democrats saying no one's coming after your guns.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and of course, this is years after their goldfish memory doesn't recall Barbara Boxer in the 90s saying, I would say, a paraphrase of the quote, you can look it up, Barbara Boxer guns, just Google it.
Yeah.
If you're still allowed to. Minus 1 trillion social credit, but it's worth the hit. She says, Mr. and Mrs. America, if I had 50 plus 1 votes, I'd say turn them in. Every single gun. If I had the votes in the Senate, is what Barbara Boxer said in the 90s.
Do you guys hear that? I'm waiting to hear people say, what do you know? Alex Jones was right. They're coming for our guns.
Oh, yeah. 1776 will commence again. Mao took the guns. Hitler took the guns. The British took the guns.
And we see one of the things
Well, they tried. We didn't let them.
That's
Wait
true.
a minute. Trump is supposed to be Hitler, but yet it's his opponents who want to take the guns.
Exactly.
Didn't Hitler take the guns? Oh gosh, I love Snopes so much. That's sarcasm, guys.
Although they are great for exposing exactly what's going on if you read what they have to say.
During the 2016 the Republican primaries, Ben Carson said, well, if the Jews had the Second Amendment in Nazi Germany, they would have been able to defend themselves and very well could have averted the Holocaust.
Right.
Snopes said, not true. And on the basis of, while, and this is paraphrasing Snopes, while there was draconian gun control against Jews, there was not draconian gun control against German citizens. So if the German neighbors, if the Jewish people, if their neighbors wouldn't defend them with guns, what evidence do we have they would have defended themselves with guns?
Well,
like,
that's some
what?
twisted logic.
What?
I think the
incredible.
Polish Jews in Warsaw would have had a something to answer about
Yeah,
that.
basically
because
the Polish did it with bricks and weapons they procured from people they've just physically disarmed.
Yep.
So imagine if they just had the munitions when the war started. Of course, have you seen the film Defiance? Great, the 2007 Daniel Craig, James Bond actor film called Defiance. It's a true story about these Jews that essentially did have weapons, and they survived all of World War II, spoiler, essentially having skirmishes in the woods with Nazis for years, and they survived.
You know, my great-grandfather's brother was a Catholic priest and happened to be back in Belgium. He did most of his service in the Belgian Congo prior to that. But under German occupation, their monastery he was at had a transmitter going up the inside of the smokestack, and they had Morse code, and they were notifying England of the bombing raids that were coming. And the Nazis were all over the place looking for their, knew the transmission was coming from the monastery. They just could never find it. And a few years later, he came to visit my great-grandfather's farm. My dad got a chance to hear all these stories. And I'm thinking, you know what? If a bunch of Catholic priests have the balls to stand up to Hitler and that, you have to wonder, you know, where were the rest of the Germans? This was a Belgian priest who had the guts to do this. And, you know, we have to be willing to stand up. And I tell you what, there's not as much going on. There's more lip service going on in Oklahoma to standing for constitutional rights than is actually going on.
Well, I'm very happy to hear you say that, because I've been saying it for a while and trying to figure out how we can get more actual action and people actually standing up. Well, it's even more so than the memes. But I was speaking with a gentleman today and getting people to stand up and although he said he agreed with everything that I was saying, getting him to actually do something would have been like trying to pull teeth and without an anesthetic.
Well, maybe you need a dental license.
There's
A license.
I tell you,
A constitutional license.
I told you earlier, I said, you know, what I really want to talk about, I can't talk about tonight. Next week, we are going to have a barn buster of a topic to come up. I just
Many of them.
got to wait till everything's in a row. And it's, to your point, Oldham, we've got to actually do something about it.
It's not about so much about rewriting laws. It's about enforcing the Constitution we have and making sure that the laws are properly enforced.
Yeah.
And that's going to take each and every
You
one
mean
of
like
us.
immigration law?
Well, yeah, that's a separate issue, but yes, I mean,
it's the same issue.
Let's start with our own rights, among which is regulating who comes in and out of the country. But let's start with standing up for our own rights and those of our neighbors.
What about these crimes where you're presumed guilty and you've got to give up your Fifth Amendment right?
Yeah.
The self-incrimination. Basically, that's what DUI steps are.
Let's tune in our audience.
Ooh,
Hey, I am Tom McCann, your host with 3D Politics Live. All three Davids here in Oklahoma that matter. David Vann, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso, talking about all things national, state, political, and local. I want to know from our constitutional experts here, how is it, I've asked this question before, but back to this enforcement of the law. How is it that a person like Beto or any one of the Democrats at the debate can say, we're going to come after your guns, and yet take an oath that swears to uphold the Constitution? Wouldn't it start with that right there? You wouldn't be able to take the oath if you're going to deny the Second Amendment.
Yes. You do have the right, as a citizen, having taken the oath, to seek to properly change the Constitution. Okay, so you don't like the guns, you want to change the form of government. You take your oath, you support it, you support and you live your oath, but then you go about Article 5 and you change it lawfully. But that's not what they're doing. They're talking about a treasonous act and they're calling for war, and they're calling for civil war. They're trying to set half of the nation against the other half.
And yet they'll say Roe versus Wade is settled law, but the Second Amendment's not.
Right. Whatever they
Well,
want.
it's all
is,
about
is-
framing. Yeah, here we go. This
Right.
is just a court decision versus the Second Amendment. Obviously, we know court decisions go back and forth on the same issue. I mean, slavery is probably the most famous example.
Yeah.
Back and forth, back and forth. I mean, it's not as established as a constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
If you have a person that is on the mass media airwaves suggesting that he's going to use the force of government to come after your legally possessed property, is that very likely merely, inciting a riot?
Oh, it's more than that.
It's
Oh,
treason.
It's
probably.
way
Yeah,
more
it's
than
probably
that.
straight up treason.
We are
It's
talking.
tyranny.
We are talking. Not only is it not only is he expressing just blatant tyranny.
Yeah.
Okay, in whatever form, because there's plenty of them that are talking. Look at constitutional grounds. I shared John Stossel's report where they did the math and figured out how much everybody wanted to spend, new spending. And believe it or not, it was Kamala Harris who was outspending Bernie Sanders. But and Beto was down. I don't even know if they included Beto. I can't remember now. But anyway, but the point is
Robert Francis, you mean?
that exactly. But the point is that all of it is tyrannical, whether it's socialistic or what, communistic or what. But the none of it is lawful. Every single bit of it is treasonous because it comes back and violates we the people.
Yeah.
And so there's no possible way that we can even deign to think that it is in any way lawful. And so what are we going to do? What are we the people if something like that was to come about, or these people were really start to go for it? What would we do? Come on, they are coming after us and they are hurting people in the process. It's already happening. We're talking about checkpoints. We're talking about.
I once heard a great philosopher say, 1776 will commence again if they try to take the guns. And that Hitler took the guns, that Stalin took the guns, and that Mao took the guns. And we just can't stand for that.
Alex Jones said the answer to 1984 is 1776.
Well, that's true.
And now your social credit is abysmal.
Oh,
Thank you.
ours is already a bit.
Now I'm down here with Oldham.
Before it was just poor.
Well,
Now
here-
it's abysmal.
But the thing is, and it shouldn't. You know what's sad, and I've been noticing this on constitutional grounds by the posts that I put up. When I put up something against exposing moms against tyranny, or the moms demand, or the moms
I love
demand,
that.
the moms demand tyranny. Excuse me, or the moms demand action. That's been by far my most popular post. It's about the guns, and those posts take off like wildfire. But you talk about other rights that are not the guns, and people will differ on whether or not it's a right, and they will not come out and support their neighbors on these things.
Well, I mean,
Why?
It's the Second Amendment for a reason. It's near the top, right? It's kind of at a focal point of interest.
Yeah, but if you're not willing to use the gun, or if you're willing to use your gun wrongly, like the fire department man in the off-duty fire department worker who drew down on the guy open carrying with the AR-15 in camo at the Walmart up in Kansas.
Right.
Okay.
Was that legal or not?
If the other gentleman hadn't done anything wrong, then yes, it was illegal.
Yeah.
But we have people misusing their rights and all in the name of right, and people declaring as they want which side was correct or not.
There's no such thing as a right that exists that you can't assert yourself.
Couldn't the fireman who pulled his firearm at the Walmart thing, reasonably say he thought his life was in danger?
We don't know. We don't
the
know.
legal doctrine, to my understanding, is if the guy just had a rifle hanging around his neck, no. And of course, there's tons of footage in Walmart, so we'll be able to find out.
But I'm not sure that we've seen any of that.
That's not the proper legal standard. It isn't whether you feel your life's in danger.
For the police officer,
No.
not
No.
for a citizen.
No. if a reasonable expectation
Okay.
of a danger.
Right. You don't just
And
get to
that
pick.
I work around mentally ill people enough to know there's a difference between how you feel and what's a reasonable feeling.
Right.
They aren't the same thing.
Well, they're completely subjective, so we aren't going to get anywhere
Yeah.
there.
But the
as
law
long as
does
clever
take
attorneys
into
are involved.
consideration reasonability.
Yes, and the court's got to review those.
My
kinds of things. Was that
understanding is
reasonable?
the way I would
Right.
look at it, and I don't know if it's a legal standard, but just from some of the firearms instruction that I've had, and I'm, concealed carry license holder or pistol permit holder, however you want to refer to it, until that weapon's brandished, it's not deadly threat of deadly force unless that weapon is in the hands of someone. If it's simply holstered,
That's an interesting
or
dichotomy with
slung,
what they pushed on the media, that the gun is dangerous just hanging there.
it is not dangerous simply
Well-
because you see it. But the law is, then you can take action. It is deadly force has not been exerted against you
Well,
until someone brandishes the weapon.
And
It has to
remember,
be in
right.
their hand.
it's the news media that's generally responsible for people's terrorized fear
Oh yeah.
of
Oh,
guns.
yes.
So
Yeah.
so they're actually
But
proliferating.
go to your safe
Right.
space if you see
Yeah.
a gun. Fine. Don't draw a gun
Well-
or a weapon in someone simply because you see a weapon. It needs to be in someone's hands.
And the news media gets all of this from government sources. They have people in government who are helping to spread this information so that they have an excuse to run it. They did the same things with vaccines, measles scare and everything like that, so they could try to get vaccine mandates. And it's been whatever the scare is that they want to push.
Yeah.
And guns is one of the biggest.
Yeah, it's
So-
hyped up emotions. I mean, if you dressed in a pseudo security / law enforcement looking uniform, minus the badges, because it would be illegal to impersonate, licensed municipal law enforcement. But people probably wouldn't freak out. But you're wearing a hoodie with the head up and everything, and then they're probably going, because why? Society's made stereotypes of who's a
Right.
good guy with a gun and who's a bad guy with a gun.
And for you meme makers, it's time to change some of the stereotypes.
There you go.
It's
Help us.
almost like the popular contagions. The people get hyped up
Mhm.
by the media. It almost answers your question of why did they answer a call for action on some things but not on other rights that are equally important.
Well, and to that, your topic of the what did you call it?
I call it the fatalism contagion.
And that is absolutely part of it. Was part of what I was dealing with today when I was talking to the
Yeah.
nice gentleman, a friend.
Now, the San Bernardino shooters, there was a county workers' Christmas party. It happened to be a bunch of Middle Easterners come in there. And the neighbor said, yeah, we saw those, guns coming in and everything. But, man, we didn't want to report people and say we're racist because they're Middle Easterners.
Yeah.
And what brought about that? The PC, political
They're the most
correctness.
racist thing ever. It seemed like they were planning a terror attack. I mean, what could be more Middle Eastern? It seemed like a cultural thing. Who are we to decide, our culture's superior?
Yeah.
They were playing a record player. I thought they were poor. But I did a quick study on this. What turned out, I call it the fatalism contagion. There's a book called The Memoirs of Extraordinary Popular Delusions by a guy named Charles Mackay. No relation that I know of, Mackay.
Sucks to be him.
You work with the mentally ill, what can I
That's
say?
right.
What does he think about the NFL? He thinks
If he's smart, he doesn't. But I just was trying to figure out, where do we come up with this climate change contagion where we all agree that typically the contagion of fatalism is about a 10-year plan. You're going to die in about 10 to 12 years. OAC was 12. So I went to study to find out, when did we decide the world was going to end? And pretty much so, according to my recent studies, it started during the plague, about 1345 to 1350, when the plague killed 2/3 of everybody in the known world. The other third was...
the important part.
Well, the European
Sure,
world.
David, ruin my thunder if
Repeating
you want.
yourself.
The fact is, nearly
Yourself.
everybody... This guy's from London, so almost everything
Oh.
he's doing is is European, but yeah, a lot
Well,
of
they're
people-
smart. They got British
Two-
accents.
Two other angles.
Weren't they the ones fudging the climate gate numbers?
This is a
Oh,
really
yes.
long story, and if you guys
I'm sorry. Are you interrupting us?
Go ahead. Fine.
trying to be talented when I'm just a host? What the hell am I doing here? But just real quickly.
Yes. No, go.
The end of the world's going to happen if I don't get this story out. But it turns out that all these stories like Chicken Little and these things have their roots in the 1345, 1350 plague. It became rational thinking that 2/3 of everybody we know is dead. This is probably it. And then even some of the Christian, the end is near, added some of that. They construed their exegesis and threw some of that in there. That helped fuel it up. But just real quickly, some numbers. June 1523 was our first consensus prediction. Everybody came together, and that is the soothsayers and the astrologers and such, and they decided that February 1524, the Thames River would flood London, wiping out 10,000 homes. In January of 1524, 20,000 people fled London based on the doomsday predictions.
How many lives were saved?
And created. But the people that had sold the doomsday predictions, instead of being in trouble, they made the very clever case that they were only off by one number, and it was really not
1,000.
wasn't just 100, 15, 20, like Al Gore. I was just off by 100 years, just one single digit. But again, 1628, there was a comet, and the plague broke out in Milan. They blamed it on the comet. 1630. Another thing that happens with these contagions is people plant seeds. As far back as 1230, there were things said about the poisoning of Milan. Well, in 1630, when the plague hit, they all went, aha, that seed finally came true. And
Repeat a lie long
who
enough.
is the prophet that everybody goes back to?
Nostradamus.
Nostradamus.
Terrible.
And now, have you ever heard of Mother
French
Shipton? Okay, Mother Shipton is a gal.
Oh, yes.
She was a soothsayer born 1488, lived till 1561. She had famous predictions about London burning to ashes. And during 1666...
Happened a couple of times.
She was right a couple times.
on.
When you make everything out of wood and thatched roof, gee, that's not a
Who
stretch.
predicted?
You guys make her job sound easy.
I remember September of 1988, there was a book that took the Christian world by storm called 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back, sometime between September 11th and September 13th, depending where
And it's
it's
been about 31 years since our Lord and Savior returned.
And,
it's a big deal. Clearly, this is the tribulation.
Let me say this, with all respect to eschatology, and one day Jesus will return. I mean, I believe that. But I remember, as a young associate pastor at church in Minneapolis, sitting in the senior pastor's office, and one of the young boys in the youth was in there, and we were talking, and he says, "Pastor, I've been hearing people talk about Jesus coming back for more than 2 years now. And he still hasn't come back. Now, what's the deal?" And pastor just says, "Joey, Jesus come back tonight for you." And you go, "Oh, that's true, But I think it has been a tool of activism, whether it's radical political movements or religious movements, and that to stir up this kind of thing. Maybe not for true biblical scholarship, but maybe for other reasons.
Well, it's never been for true biblical
Well,
scholarship.
it's in the
never
collective
happened.
consciousness that the world is ending no matter what. If you're looking at a secular ideology, it's global warming, it's solar flares, it's an asteroid, whatever. And we've seen these cataclysms before, both in science and in religion. You've got this in Islam, this concept of the 13th Imam in the end times. Constantly of clerics saying this time is upon us. Since the inception of Islam and since the inception of Christianity, you had Christian sects saying this is the end time. As a matter of fact, there's not been a Christian or religious generation that I'm aware of since the founding of any of the major religions that has not thought they were living at the end of the age, the end times. Perhaps it's our own consciousness that we are living in our own end of the age, because we will die
Well, the
during our
mortality
lifetime.
is the reason
Right.
the reason I bring up these stories, the ongoing stories, is to show how the contagion works. It lays dormant until the mind. It's like Nicolas Cage. He doesn't really act. You just project whatever you think onto him. So
You take that back.
we just
As
wait.
Nicholas Coppola. Get his name right.
It's not like so we just wait until so literally documented 1666, London is burning, the Duke of York is there to try to fix it, and people were folding their arms, counting on the fact that Mother Shipton had said 200 years before, well, London's going to burn, so this is going to be it. They just fall into it. 1736, famous wisdom. Let me throw these out real fast.
Yeah.
Predicted world destruction starting in London, 1761. February 8th and March 8th, 2 earthquakes happened, and a guy named Bell predicted the world would be destroyed 1761, April 5th. March 12th, 1842, there was a report in the London Saturday Journal among the weak-minded that London will be destroyed by earthquake on 17 March or St. Patrick's Day. And it didn't happen, but it was something pronounced on 1203 by Dr. D, the astrologer. Yeah. The bottom line is about these prophecies, and this is a quote from this Charles Mackay. These contagions, they have a most pernicious effect upon the mind of the vulgar as they induce to believe in fatalism. It takes away the hope of recovery, the greatest balm in every malady, increased threefold the ravages.
I don't think
Hercules would say that.
I don't think it's trying to get fatalism. I think it's actually a chronological snobbery that our generation is the most important, or the pinnacle time to live is right now.
Yeah.
And
it's like confirmation bias.
If you've ever read some of C.S. Lewis's books, probably some of the least read are things like The Hideous Strength, which was an end times novel as part of a trilogy. And whereas much American religious books about end time, studies, always seem to focus on the United States being where the Antichrist comes from and rises to power and takes over the world through the U.S. government. Well, C.S. Lewis had a narrative where it was through the British government that the Antichrist comes and takes over.
That's because he was a Brit.
Well, of course, and that's exactly my point.
I think essentially the scripture states that it specifically has to be from that area known as the Holy Roman Empire. It's basically Central Europe, and that's explicitly
now
stated.
You're just blowing it for us, But I mean,
go read it. Read something before you have an opinion about it. I guess.
But here's the thing: is there is a fatalism that comes about when you believe this stuff. And it takes it how it comes about or how it manifests itself is in different ways. If you're a tyrannical
climate change alarmist,
a climate change alarmist, then or a cultist, then your fatalism is that this is going to happen. I need to do something about it. Okay,
you're not doing the stuff that I want you to do.
No,
therefore, you're going to cause the end of the world.
But David's on something. There is even worse fatalism that happens when you realize you've been duped. As Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain once said, it's much easier to fool the people than to convince them they've been fooled.
Right.
Well, absolutely.
Because once you've given everything you've got into this worldview and you find out it's a fraud, so many people commit suicide.
It's amazing how many of them don't ever find it's a fraud, even when there's like a specific date and a hyper-specific chain of events that are supposed to happen. They just keep on moving the goalposts, and it's not surprising to me. This happens in politics. As soon as you defeat a leftist argument, it's like a hydra. Another one. Well, I was never really arguing that.
I'm trying to remember his name.
It was never about collusion, right? It was all about something else.
Well, it's called cognitive dissonance. Yeah. They just cannot accept that as truth.
Well, I'm trying to remember his name. There was a guy who just within the last 20 years said Jesus was going to return, gave the date.
Just one guy?
And no, he actually gave the date. He'd already done it back in the 80s and
Yeah,
been
it doesn't
wrong.
matter.
And he said that wasn't a prophecy. That was a mathematical equation that he got.
He was
He
off by
missed.
100
But this one was a prophecy, and then he was wrong. And
Bible's not
but-
exactly a math book, you
but
know.
my point is that as I've been talking to people, and especially these end of time Christians who are really stuck on that we're at the end of times, and we see all
give them a
the
break.
writings in the sky and this and that and the other thing, that they then will use that as excuse not to do their duty on earth before our law.
Right.
So we have the duty to uphold our law, our Constitution, and Declaration of Independence, our founding principles. We as Americans, that's what we have as duty to our fellow Americans. But they choose to say, well, it's all going to end anyway. It's all
I don't have to pay my
hell in a
taxes.
handbasket. And so then they write it off and they say, I'm a praying person. I'm just not going to do anything about it.
Well, this actually
And that
ties
is-
back into what you were saying about how people will respond to certain threats on certain amendments and not other threats, because there's a contagion of hope as much as there's a contagion of fatalism.
Yeah.
It's just much easier to get people to do the lazy contagion of faith. It's easier to say it's all going to end one way or the other,
Well,
so that way I don't have
Negative
to
is
try.
always sweeter than
And don't
Right.
be so harsh on these people, because the last person to say the world is ending is always going to be more correct than the person before them. But,
It's always in the
they're
last
getting more
one.
and more accurate every time.
I have to say this. Socrates put it well. That
It's like he knows everybody.
yeah, I know what you were saying isn't true, because I asked Jesus. He's down in the homeless shelter, and he said that Jesus wasn't the
told
true
me he was
Jesus.
here that day.
Yeah, but no, Socrates said it takes bravery to seek out truth, because once you accept that it's true, you have to reform your life around that.
You
Correct.
submit to the truth. You
And
don't
it's-
believe it.
And
You submit
change,
to it.
change
Right.
is hard for people to do.
Yeah.
And they would rather believe that's a lie, because if it's true, then they, to be an honest person, has to realign their life
Right.
correct.
to conform to it.
Correct.
And when you
So-
have invested 40 years of your female life into the concept of feminism, you're not just going to get off of it
Yeah.
when you find out it's full of crap.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and essentially
I'm
everyone
not
agrees.
flag, man.
Everyone agrees that first and second wave feminism just about. I mean, everybody agrees. It's the third wave feminism that people don't agree with,
Right.
which is insane. Like, all men are pigs, but women are equal to men. It's like the non sequitur leftism.
No, and there's no
Like,
such
what?
thing as men and women, but women are got to be
Right.
equal to
Yeah, no such
something.
gender is a social construct, but there is
Right.
structural sexism. And
So-
so, well, which is it? They can't both be
I want
true.
to say, if you think that you've tuned into a seminary discussion on end times, this is actually a
You're right.
political blog.
Okay, all right. Hey, folks, you just tuned in to 3D Politics. If you're just now getting here, I'm Tom McKay, your host. I got all three Davids from Oklahoma that matter: David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. Find out more information on David Van from SoonerPolitics.org. Everything you need to know, state politics. ConstitutionalGrounds.com with David Oldham for all your in-depth studies of Constitution and constitutionality. And of course, at Dave D'Ambroso on Facebook for all the witty comments. You can always contact me right here at 3D Live, 3D Politics Live. I just got to say that this contagion thing really leans into how we tap into the psychology of getting people to be inspired and hopeful about it, building back a constitutional republic.
Well, we got to take,
You gotta still hope and change.
yeah. But you've got
No, it's true.
You've got to take action. I had to sit on myself not to segue when Olden was talking about actually getting involved in doing something, because we did do that last Thursday. A bunch of us went down to the health department, scared the bejesus out of these state workers.
Tell us about the health department commissioner resigning.
Yeah, so I tell you, Ron Durbin, who's probably the preeminent lawyer fighting for medical marijuana law and implementation of the program, he realized that, you know what, they weren't trying to make this work. The communication had fallen off the rails. So he keeps reaching out to the commissioner. Yes, he even has to file a lawsuit to stop part of the implementation because it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment when they're just
What's
going
that?
to give out, say, here's the list of people who have medical conditions for which their doctors think they should take marijuana. Police department, you should know who these people are.
How's that a
Right.
violation?
Yeah.
If they have nothing to fear, or nothing to
If
hide.
they have
So-
no weed to hide,
so-
we care if we smoke.
So that aside, we're
They
trying
shouldn't be afraid for their persons
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
property or
What a
their
bunch of
effects.
weirdos.
So
I
you
want
know,
their names now.
couple weeks ago, I called Representative Scott Fettgatter, who's invested so much of himself into making this industry work. And, he
So
said,
can we
Dave,
call him Kingpin from now on?
yeah, I don't know. I've called him a lot of things. I should not come up with any more names. So Scott's been good on this. And so, Scott said, I've done my best. I called Tom there, the Commissioner Bates over at the health department. He told me this, and I disseminate as best I can. People are still worked up. And I said, Scott, you don't officially speak for the agency. The agency can still do whatever they want. And they said, we never announced anything.
Right.
And then they make you look bad, Scott. You got to tell them. So he said, well, I've got a conference call with them in an hour. I'll bring it up then. And I called him back after that. He says, well, I asked. We'll see. He said, we're going to talk again on Tuesday. And, he passed out the room. He says, Dave, he may be leaving the health department to take another position. And he
This
says,
is Bates.
Tom Bates,
Yeah.
the commissioner of the Department of Health. So Tuesday, we're already ramping up this. We're going to go march on the health department, which is headquarters for the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. That is under the health
And
department.
you're marching in protest.
In
right?
protest, the
Oh.
fact that they are not finding a way that all these businesses have invested 6-7 figures.
In other words, simply
Yes.
protecting our rights. They're trying to
Yeah.
figure out a way that they can violate.
But I want to
The
be
people.
specific
Okay.
here. There was a process for renewing your license to be a grower, processor, or dispensary. Oldham loves this.
Totally
Yeah.
legitimate
Yeah.
constitutional process.
We will now stop for 2 seconds for
And
Oldham
moment
to
of
say,
silence.
oh no, for Oldham to say, I told you so.
Ah.
Yes. So anyway, because it's not a right when you have to get a license, isn't that right?
That's correct.
That's it in a
Well,
nutshell.
I mean, you have the right. They've violated the right.
Right. So we're just trying to find a way these guys can, keep doing business without police raiding, taking their whole inventory.
Right.
So they got to renew their licenses.
Oh, that's just to protect them
Yeah.
and to serve them.
Let me tell you, this is
And to
not
keep the
about
community safe.
protecting anybody.
Are the dispensaries right now unable to do business, or are they just under threat of potential legal action?
Yeah.
Yes.
They can be shut down.
Both.
Since then, we have found 4 different versions of a policy for which they're giving a grace period. Every one of those 4 uses different wording, some of it very much in contradiction to the other of the 4 statements.
Right.
And
And they're coming from 4 different places in the
in the department,
Health
the
department.
Government at its
OMMA,
finest.
yes, that agency overseeing it. On one of them, it says you've got to submit your renewal by your expiration date of your license. The next one says, well, we're going to give you 30 days after your license expires for you to renew. And then, there's another one that says you have up to 90 days after you put it in before we're even going to tell you whether you got your license, but you can still run your shop for
Again,
90
this
days.
is still sounding like public schools to me. It's like, I've got my project ready, but all the other students don't have their ready, so I'm going to give you another week to do
Actually,
your project.
remember, it sounds like the mafia and their protection programs, and
Yeah.
whether or not they give you a grace period
They're-
to hand them the paper sack full of money.
Yeah, they're
Because that's exactly what
Yeah.
it is.
and there's not much difference
And good on
between
them for
government
doing that.
agencies and mafia.
Thank you, Don.
No, none.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
so
Just trying to raise your social score.
so here's the deal. We went down there, and we're getting ready for the march, and the attorney Ron Durbin says, "Dave, did you hear the news?" Is what he says. Tom Bates just resigned. Stitt's going to put him over in some new agency, and get this, he is going to be the commissioner of the agency on government transparency. Oh my God!
And
Is this too funny?
no, this is going to be fun because now we have a known violator of transparency,
Yes.
heading transparency And so what do we as the people need to do? We need to force the transparency. We need to keep him honest
So
because
where do the
we
folks
can
find
make
their-
him resign from that just as fast as any of the others.
Where do the folks find their pitchforks and torches at?
Yeah.
You know,
Where's
I
the
would
repository.
Atwoods, Osh. There's several of them, but I think I think it's high time.
Machetes.
You can always get the torches, to keep the bugs away. We
Okay,
can always use those.
Tar and
But
feathers.
so I got to tell you, they announced who's going to take over, and it's the guy running the county health department for Oklahoma County, an attorney. He used to be a law school professor up here at TU Law School, Gary Cox. And so we're like, okay, so we get social media. Gary Cox, come on down. We want to meet you. Reception here on the front lawn. We got about 300 advocates for medical marijuana.
Wow.
He'll come on here. No show. So we're, getting ready to do something, and a whole, this 3 or 4 people from the health department come outside the door, and they're just watching us. So I break away from the pack, and I go over, and I said, hi. I says, is this bothering you guys? And he said, no, they wouldn't hardly talk to me. Eventually, they kind of opened up and stuff, and they said, well, we don't want to be in camera or anything, and they said, we're just, here to
I hope somebody got them from
keep.
a distance.
Oh my
because
God!
they need to be on camera.
There's better than that coming.
Oh,
here.
good. Okay.
So anyway, eventually I said, okay, here's what Ron Durbin and attorney Rachel Bassett, Simcoe, and the others are saying. Because I already knew what was the program, and I kind of gave them the headline. And then I said, okay, they're getting ready to come over here and ask you this, just so you know. So I'm trying to give them a heads up. I'm trying to build rapport, and like, okay.
Right.
And so eventually they come over, and then the head of security comes to the front, and he said, well, Tom Bates isn't in the building. He's not here. Okay, well, we want to see the director of the OMMA, Adrienne Rollins. Oh, no, she's in meetings all day. She's busy. She's in meetings. And like,
Those are
seriously?
meetings.
Yes, meetings. Yeah.
Meetings.
And in fact, later that day,
There's
Meeting on-
300
meeting on
citizens
how to
out
avoid
front,
you.
and
That's
10 minutes
That's
to
a
come
get
back
this.
to
Yeah,
something.
that's not
and when it was all over, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but we're lining up by the parking garage, waving at each of them as they come out at the end of our deal. And here comes Adrienne Rollins out. And we're all waving, Adrienne, and she just, head down, going straight out. But, we went in to see him. Ron Durbin says, okay, well, I need to schedule an appointment with Adrienne Rollins. Well, we can't, we really can't facilitate. Okay, just give me your email so I can. Well, we can't give that out. And he said, really, that's freedom of information request. That's open records law. Get me to HR. I'm going to do it. Well, so
Probably online already.
yeah.
even.
So they give him to HR. HR then says, well, we got to send that up to legal. Well, what does legal say? Well, they ain't getting back to you. They're ignoring it. And I'm like, really? And he says to this guy, who's the same guy I've been talking to outside camping out. And he says, well, asked him something. He says, I'm not going to answer that. And he said, who are you? And the guy puts his hand over his security badge, his ID badge.
Because he said he was legal.
Because he's breaking the law. He cannot hide his badge while he's there. That's part of open records.
Right.
Okay?
Oh, boy.
And so he's violating the law, and now he's obstructing
Don't worry.
an attempt
He certainly will be punished, David.
to
Mann.
enforce it. Yes. And so Ron Durbin gets him on all of this stuff. And here's the thing. We were nice all day. I mean, the whole time. There was no
Collegiate.
shouting. There was no shouting.
Collegial.
And we had probably 150 of us there. And scared the Jesus out of them, because to them, it's, oh my God, the potheads are in the front yard.
And
Yeah.
any reaction
Well,
from
where were you,
actual
David Mann?
citizens,
Where were you?
They're not used to actual customers showing up.
No, to David's point, people don't do this.
Right.
And it freaks them out when something like this happened. Now, here's Durbin's point at the end. Says, you know what? Today was important because today was our attempt to be nice. Now, get ready. Oklahoma Health Department, OMMA,
Yep.
you will not believe what's coming at you.
Well, they should.
I'm just telling you now, so when it happens, you say, my God, we should have listened.
They should be scared because you have the lawful, legal, constitutional authority as a citizen to remove them.
Yeah.
They are supposed to work for you
Yeah.
and represent you. You have, I mean, they should be terrified.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
should be.
you have that
Yes.
ability and you're exercising it, and you very well looks like you're going to execute
Well,
on it.
and they should expect. I mean, the only thing that they have right to expect is prison for their criminal acts that they have been committing, because each one of these people working at these agencies, OMMA, every single person working at OMMA has committed criminal acts, because every single one of them is participating in an illegal
Do you know
scheme.
all of them, David?
No, I don't know any of them.
At
But,
least 14 days in some community service.
No, on the level of state government, and guys, I'm going to want your help on this.
okay.
Okay, the types of law. We have constitutional law, right?
Right.
That's the top. And then you have statutory law.
Right.
Right? And then you have agency rules, and then administrative code.
Right.
And I'm trying to think what else. I wish Amanda Teagarden was here. She's
well, I mean,
pirate law.
You have your board rulings and your commission rulings and things like that as well.
Yeah.
So what's your question?
So here's the thing. When something isn't fleshed out and made clear by the Constitution, you've got a statute. And then when it's not in a statute, the agency has some latitude to create rules that are consistent with that for the carrying out of it.
I don't think that's the case in Oklahoma.
No, actually, this is the problem.
Backwards.
This is the problem with where we're at, because we think that's the way it should be, and sadly in Oklahoma, our state constitution is written so badly that these agencies, boards, and commissions actually have extra legislative powers. In other words, they have powers to legislate outside of the legislature.
They
dictating.
tell the legislator how it's going to be.
Exactly. That's
Not
why
the
Scott
other way
Beckgetter
around.
had problems when he's talking to the agency, because the agency
They're
can
all
just thumb their nose at him.
autocracies.
So
all
you're-
500 state agencies are autocratic and operate as their own governments with their own courts. It's completely bizarre, completely unacceptable, and a mess.
So let's get back to David's question.
And here's where our legislature's gone. They said, unless we overrule you at next session, whatever you said, we're going to accept that as the law.
Right. And that they
the
can't do, because that was never put to a vote.
Okay.
And the other thing that we have accepted, we accept this at the federal level as well as at the state level, and that is that the legislatures, Congress or the state legislatures, somehow can delegate their legislative authority to the board or commission or whatever.
Why not?
And the thing is that is anathema to every aspect of our government.
Okay, so I did that little exercise with you guys' input for this reason.
Okay.
Because once you don't have constitutional clarity on things like how a license is supposed to be renewed, you don't have statutory law that, and it goes down to agency rules, which are published like months in advance, then you got this administrative code. And the problem is here, today I got with some people who were in the process of renewing. Some of them had emails that had certain language on them about what their policy is with their screw-ups and what kind of grace period that they're giving us. Keep in mind, they're giving us grace for their screw-ups. It really should be us giving them grace for screwing up with our help.
Well, who really has the power then?
But here's the thing. They've written 4 different versions of what it is, and they don't
But remember, they
have altered the agreement. Pray they do not alter it further, David.
Yeah, but again, we may be able to, if we have to go to court, a judge may throw every one of them out, because not a one of them has any more power than the next one, which contradicts it.
Which, in reality, remember, I've been saying since before 788, everything about 788 has no lawful power, because it's all unlawful.
It's a charade.
Because it's a violation of our rights.
Yeah.
It's a scheme to say, no, prohibition is lawful, and we're just making some more carve-outs within prohibition, but we're going to prohibition. But medical marijuana folks, you can have a license, and therefore we're not going to charge you as a criminal, which we really think you are, but because of medical necessity, we're going to grant you the ability. But everybody else, you're still a criminal.
Right. And here's the problem. It's under the health department. which is run by a bunch of medical people.
Which
you
there's
know.
very
With-
little about the health department that they're doing that's
You're right.
constitutional.
And they've got
Very
God,
little.
God complexes.
What
out
agency
the
is that,
wazoo.
that lost the $30 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Which one was it? The medical authority?
And was it just
It's
$30 million,
Oklahoma
or
State.
is it more?
it is the Department of Health that lost that money. Couldn't
Okay.
find
Can't find
Which
it.
is different
Oh.
than...
No, it's State Department of Health.
State Department of
it's
Health,
the
okay.
same one.
Okay.
And
Lost
so
30 million. That's crazy.
yeah, and
Not a
it's
lot.
just look. This is scandal number 3. 3 years in a row. 3 scandals in a row. And the interim guy resigns. These are people who think they know more than you.
It's kind of like the anti-Epic situation, right? So they're always like trying to throw a scandal on Epic, like
Yeah.
this guy who's like getting walked out. I hope with the OSBI with this
Epic
Tommy,
online charter
what's his
school.
name? Tommy Johnson? I don't know. This guy keeps raising every year the same investigation in Epic.
Mhm.
Like it says right here, they made a profit. Well, yeah, they're not a public utility guy.
Aha, they're out for profit.
And so they
And
keep
public utilities make profit.
they
Oh,
keep
God,
they
yeah.
keep accusing them of these things that are non-crimes,
Right.
or just asserting them without any evidence at all, or they're double enrolling people. Well, I mean, maybe clerically as an accident in 10 years, I think they found 2 people, which on average is less than any given public school district, and it's like not their fault.
So,
But here's the key on this. I think the person, who is it? I think wasn't there a guy, Ron Sharp? He's a senator
Yeah.
here. He released this information, pretty much unsubstantiated, on the Senate website. Did he not? And he's going to have to walk this back, does he not?
if he used government resources in a crime, that's another crime in and of itself.
And so allegedly, I heard, and we'll have to check up on this to see if the rumor is correct or not. He's in trouble for lying about where he got his PhD from.
well,
That he said he got it from University of California, one
This
of
is
them.
the guy from Epic.
No.
No, this is the
This is the guy
sitting
slandering.
This is the guy slandering Epic.
Yes, this is what's his name? Ron Sharp, Senator Sharp, and he's an educrat, right? So his answer is always more money for education,
Oh,
less
yeah.
accountability.
Well, but yeah.
So he put this stuff slandering Epic on the, if it's wrong, which it seems to be wrong right now, on the Senate website, and it looks like he's under investigation. This is what I'm hearing. We'll find out if it's true or not, but we might be first to break it if it is true that he's under investigation. That essentially a lot of his plunder of your tax dollars came fraudulently because he lied about his education. He got
Nice.
his PhD from an education mill. Who knows if he just bought it? Who knows?
Yeah,
But-
it could be that this guy who is bashing online education,
Taking education out of the brains of
He
children.
has a vested
May-
interest.
may have gotten his PhD from an online
Was
education.
it the University of...
Make it up.
Was it the online University of California?
It was actually from Epic post-secondary.
No,
We're
joking.
I'm joking about that, Alan, but everything else is, from what I'm hearing, legitimate. I have a second rumor that, I don't know, it's maybe it's a bit juicy, but I heard that perhaps we have a new front runner for the executive officer position of the Republican Party here in the state. And I've heard from some legislators, and maybe next week we can name some names, that it's Brian Hobbs.
I don't know.
So that's interesting. If we got 2 rumors, we'll see how good these sources are
Well,
if they come to pass.
I'm waiting to find out if there is any change going on. I don't know.
Right. And from what I've heard, once again, this is secondhand, so I wasn't there. But, unlike what the New York Times, I'll actually put that out there. I don't know. I'm not declaring this as some metaphysical truth. But I heard that the current XO is meant to be a temporary position. That this is a temporary transition administration going on. And that was always Chairman McLean's plan. That's what I heard, and that Brian Hobbs is the front runner currently for the new. So we'll find out if he's the guy. But I think it's a good idea. He would unify a lot of the different factions because he's got a foot in all of them.
Tom, can I plug for next week?
Please.
We're
We're the
gonna
final stretch of tonight's show.
we're gonna talk about just what Oldham's talking about. What can citizens do to reform? And there are a lot of things. Oklahoma really does give a lot of utilities to citizens. When I say utilities, I mean tools, resources, where when we give our vote to others to lead us and they don't do it right, we have probably more power to step in than just
Like
about any other
water
state.
and electricity
Yeah.
and natural gas.
We do. We have a lot of powers. It's learning what they are so that we can actually exercise them.
Yeah.
And there may be some things that we have yet to accomplish because we have people who are looking out for others in the way.
Right.
Can you just point to me? We need to figure out this grand
No,
jury
no.
thing.
What I mean is, this is what the kind of thing that you've talked about, and but yes, we do have more powers than a lot of other states. But it is an idea that is catching on. I just read an article from somebody who wrote a year or so ago in Connecticut, another one from New Hampshire. This is an idea that is catching on because the swamp is everywhere, and it doesn't matter what level or branch you are in. Before we go, we've got to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, let's just kind of hit the home stretch real quickly so I can dub everybody. This is 3D Politics Live. I'm your host, Tom McKay. I've got David Van with SoonerPolitics.org, David Oldham with ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and of course, the fantastic Dave D'Ambroso at Dave D'Ambroso on Facebook. I've got 2 stories left on the list, and we're going to plug next week's show. Something about a primary fight.
And real quick, just 30 seconds before we get into that, to Oldham's point, I heard a guy calling into a mainstream conservative talk show on the radio talking about the different means by which we can grand jury some of these individuals breaking their constitutional oath, which is an issue you can help Oldham with. If you're moved by what Oldham's talking about, or anyone on the panel about the constitutionality of issues and having proper constitutional representation, that is an issue that is currently spoken about. How do we convene these different grand juries to hold people accountable for breaking their oath to the Constitution and violating their rights? So that's actually gaining mainstream traction. I know Oldham has been saying it for years. So maybe, who knows? He could be the guy who butterflied effect. Who knows?
Well, with the social media that we have, it's easier to put those groups in contact.
Yeah, I mean, you're just getting hundreds of people sharing his stuff now all the time. But in any case, there's a primary. J.J. Stitt, which I didn't know this guy existed until last week. He was watching the show earlier. In relation to the governor, I don't know what kind. He is primary in off for the United States Senate here in 2020. And it's interesting. I'm going to meet with him, kind of find his perspective on that. I'll report back to you. And I'm going to talk to some party officials and see, obviously no political party likes a primary of an established, your...
Oh, I don't know about that. I supported Jim Bridenstine. I supported Pat Buchanan in '92
as a party man.
Yeah, but I was relished as a renegade for doing both. But nonetheless,
he was hoping his social credit score would stay.
You still can't fly, David Van. You're stuck in the car.
I mean, Inhofe, he's been around for a while.
Sediment. I mean, he is as old as the hills.
Now his hair will be grandfathered in, though. Right?
And he's got a great legislative record, just like anyone else. He's got record pieces that you can pick apart. And the question is he going to be a lifer? He's very powerful. I think he is the head of Armed Services Committee. I mean, that's incredible. And so you could argue that he is bringing back a lot of influence to the state. Whether that's right or wrong, or constitutional or not, I mean, that's certainly debatable. Right. But he is raising the status. It is news. Primary. But this Stitt fellow, I'll tell you, don't underestimate a Stitt. He's got a background in law enforcement. He's a businessman. He's got an FFL, and he stands really strong on constitutional issues. So really, I don't see this as a loss, no matter what happens.
No, but how does Inhofe feel about it, or do we know?
I'm sure he doesn't feel very well. To find out, here's the thing. I like a lot of things that Inhofe's done. So I don't know how I feel about it, but I want to talk to some of the party people about how they feel and what the thought is. But my analysis,
I'd like to know if he watches our show.
Real
let me check.
Yeah, he was on the show. Stitt was on the show.
I do want to say,
he's watching.
The only concern I have, and we have to look at election law, because we have an incumbent who is 85. Let's just be honest. You do have a little more concern with
he'll be 91 or 92 permits.
Well, I'm just saying, not everybody who's 85 lives to be 86 even. What happens if all of a sudden we don't have a Republican on the ballot, period? Because
and that's
he doesn't make it to the ballot.
Unforeseen.
That's where I was going. I already give this Stitt fellow credit because it's a brilliant tactical play. Because even if he goes to election and loses, he is now the front runner. he is now the only name out there
If he
for
doesn't
Senate.
do something,
And if something, God forbid,
maybe,
happens
maybe
to
not.
Senator Inhofe,
I tell you, I think Frank
he's
Lucas
an
would have
exception.
something to say about
Oh,
that,
oh,
or
okay.
Mark Wayne, or any of them.
who's Frank Lucas?
Yeah,
I know Mark Wayne is.
but
Yes.
my concern too is, let's say you have two names on a primary. You have an Inhofe and a J.J. Stitt, and then you have an unforeseen health issue, or someone's life finally comes to an end. And now all of a sudden,
Stitt wins.
by default,
Default.
J.J. Stitt's the nominee. Are
Yes.
we okay with that?
Yeah.
Because
We're gonna find
sometimes you
Yeah,
have to
we're-
be careful. In 94, we decided, Republicans in Tulsa, nobody really had the money or the gumption to go after Susan Savage, our mayor. And so there was not going to be any Republican. And about 2 hours before filing closed, a Ku Klux Klan member,
A
something-
Democrat.
Pat Mahan, I think it was, or Dennis Mahan, and he files. Now he's the Republican nominee.
Right.
So Terry Simonson, who was our chairman at the time, he's got a dilemma. He had to get his butt in the car, get down to the election board 20 minutes before closing. He files himself. He has no interest at all, but we cannot have a Klan leader as our nominee.
Right. Right.
And you know what? Terry Simonson, this was the pinnacle of his elective political career, because not only did he win the primary, he almost beat the incumbent Democrat, Susan Savage. It was like by 300-400 votes that he lost. And Terry Simonson's never reached that
That
pinnacle.
reminds me of, I
since.
think, David Duke, former
Yes.
Klan master, Klan whatever, Grand
From Louisiana.
and congressman, the Dr. David Duke. I don't know if he got his degree from the same university as Ron Sharp or not. I don't know. Anyway, he has endorsed Maxine Waters. So the Klan endorses Maxine Waters. So you vote for Maxine, you agree with the Ku Klux Klan.
I'll disagree with the Klansman for the block.
I heard this is a great one from my buddy Ben Shapiro. When he was looking at this DNA stuff that Elizabeth Warren put out, he said, "Why, she is so white. Richard Spencer's endorsing her."
And Ivory soap claims to be 99.6% pure. Elizabeth Warren's whiter than Ivory soap, according to your DNA analysis.
Yeah. So anyway, what else?
Well, we're having a lot of fun, but we do have to talk about tomorrow
Tomorrow
before we get
is a
going.
special day.
Tomorrow is the day.
Taco Tuesday.
And besides Taco Tuesday, it is also Constitution Day, which celebrates the signing of the Constitution and the sending of it to the states for ratification.
Yes.
Which happened a couple years later. So it's the day that they finished, and they basically closed the convention and signed the document.
And it seems so simple when you say it. The day is special because there was a great resolution and resolve of tension. How many months had they been in the heat? Arguing, debating,
about 5.
day after day after day. When they finally were able to say, "Can we agree?" and sign it today, there was a great sigh of relief.
Well,
Yeah, I
it
think
was
a lot
it
of those
was
guys didn't have access to Ivory soap either.
was a great
But
compromise,
There was
There was a
effort.
lot of compromising, and it wasn't a done deal yet.
No,
because it still
was
had
a
to be-
huge milestone of
Fact.
agreement amongst vast numbers of different
Fact
types
is,
of
it had failed until the people rose up and said, unless you put these 12 points of Bill of Rights,
Right, the Bill of Rights.
12 they
Well,
actually had.
that was what Madison came up with and introduced.
Yeah. But that's what sold it in the end.
It didn't
great-
get
the
signed.
compromises.
That we wouldn't have Constitution Day on September 17th without having it been a general agreement that there would be a Bill of Rights, because George Mason did not sign, and nor did Thomas Paine, Patrick Henry.
Mhm.
They did not sign the Constitution because it did not contain a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
And so but the point is that on this day we had the form of our law now and our form of government, which is unique in the world There is no other government that is structured like us,
Yeah.
where literally, and this is what gripes me, and I think it's partly my fault that I haven't been able to explain it, that literally is anarchistic, because we do not have rulers. It is anarchistic, but we do have an administration to make sure that we can all get along and that we have means for redress if we're harmed by our neighbors or by our government.
We have a collective means for
And for
individual
self-defense.
rights.
Yes, and for self-defense, whether individually
Yeah.
or collectively as a nation.
We have consented to self-govern, not to be anarchistic.
Well,
It is revolutionary.
It is self-governing anarchism, literally, because we do not have the Meisterburger, who is sitting up there on high dictating to us. Oh wait, we do.
Yeah, I was gonna
right?
say,
You like to
black
on TV.
robes. We have black
And the
robes.
black robes. But the point is that is not our law. What we celebrate tomorrow is what is true law, and we need to share this information so that people would get back to looking at what is truly written in law,
Yeah.
and separate that from the myriad of statutes which divert from it, and set up what we have today,
Can
because
I
what
say
we have
something?
just
Yeah.
isn't
Okay.
Man.
our Constitution.
My point to it is, and don't worship the document, because
No.
listen, when I hear people say, well, the founders believe this, and listen, the founders disagreed vehemently with the founders, right? I mean,
Thomas
you can
Jefferson
find
disagrees with Thomas Jefferson.
you can find a founder to believe just about anything you want, or you can make one up. But I mean, the good thing about it did drive Ben Franklin to religion, right? Because he finally said, folks, let's pray. And you'd never heard Ben Franklin say that before.
I know, I never have.
The one thing about the founders is that they were consistent. They were unified on the fact that liberty, individual liberty, must reign.
Yeah.
Okay. There was no question. The question before the gathering at the convention and Continental Congress and everybody before and after the Constitution for quite a while was, how do we go about maintaining liberty, not whether or not we're going to. Today we have Beto saying, hell yes,
Robert
we're going to take
France.
your AR-15
Yeah.
and we're AK-47.
That's a lot of
Hell
soy,
yes.
Robert.
The argument now is whether or not we are going to have liberty, not how are we going to go about having it.
Yeah.
And that is where the question is fundamentally changed,
And it's
we
entropy.
need
It's
to
almost like the law
reverse that, get that back
of physics. We've
Yeah.
lost
the
organization.
bicameral solution was a big part of that compromise that made it happen. I don't know of any other nations that had anything like that. You had the British House of Commons.
and the House of Lords.
Yeah, but that's a different. I mean, it's kind of, sort of, but it's not. The
Well,
House of
we
Lords doesn't.
changed it to make it work properly.
Right.
Thomas Paine showed clearly how it didn't work,
Right.
and how they were juxtaposed to one
Yeah,
another.
but Madison came up and said, okay, we will have one legislative body that is going to be population dispensed evenly, and the other which is going to be states dispense power evenly.
Correct.
I
And
had to explain this to a European recently, and they're like, wow, I never knew that. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah.
and so
It provides representation
so-
for states
right.
outside of California and New York.
yeah,
presently.
in any law or any bill that works in the one house and they're good, and then the other house is good, then we'll send it to a president, and if he vetoes it, well, then if we got 2/3 vote, is it 2/3?
2/3.
Yeah,
All
then you know, heck with you, president. We're moving this way.
And if you don't like the Second Amendment, Beta, Robert Francis,
Yes.
convicted burglar.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That awkward moment. You haven't seen those memes when a burglar wants to take away your right to defend yourself. Crazy. and they burgle even if he hadn't been, a felon, right? And he can't own guns. But even if that were not the case, he politically wants to pillage you with ridiculous taxes and usurpation of your rights. But the point is, I totally lost go.
When he breaks into your house, you just offer him a drink, give him the keys to your car.
Well, now he
Yeah.
wants other people to break into your house. He doesn't want to do it. He's a
Oh,
coward.
well, you know,
He's not doing. He's talking about having law enforcement
He's gonna need a
or
lot
men
of
in
soy to
blue who are there to protect
You
us.
know,
Come
yeah.
and do it for
You know,
us.
when you talk about the power of memes, one of the best ones I ever saw was a sign in a guy's front yard pointing to his neighbor's yard. He believes in gun control. He has no guns. I have guns.
Out of respect for my neighbor, I will not use my guns to defend him. I think permutations of that are that I don't call 911.
Yeah.
I call 1911. It's a picture of a.
I'm going to wrap us
pistol.
up out of here unless you got anything else.
It's a Constitution Day.
Constitution Day.
Heck yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tom McKay. I'm your host. We've got all three Davids: David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. Catch us again next week on 3D Politics Live.
Oh.